Next, we are going to be looking at pyramids, and we are going to first look at surface area of the pyramids, which is found in section 12.4 in your textbook. So let's take a look at the surface area formula here first. So this can be found on your Keystone formula sheet. Here's your surface area formula. Okay, so going through this formula, first you're going to take the area of the base, whatever the base is of the pyramid that you're given. Then you're going to add 1/2 times the number of sides of the base times what each side measures. That's that lowercase b, so the measure of each base side, times this L, this script L. And what that script L is symbolizing, it's actually representing the slant height of the pyramid. So like, what is the height of just one side of the triangular side of a pyramid? So don't get this slant height confused with the regular height. The regular height is going to start at the top of the pyramid and then go somewhere to like the middle of the pyramid and make a right angle, whereas the slant height is going to start at the top of the pyramid and go down to one of the sides and make a right angle. So as we go through the examples, I'll try to point out like when we have a regular height versus when we have a slant height. So let's look at our first example. So we're going to find the surface area of this square pyramid to the nearest tenth. So it tells me that this base here is going to be a square. So I know that this side is also 2.5. Okay, the other label that they give me, notice that it's starting at the top and going the whole way to a side. So this 5 is a slant height. Okay, our surface area formula is area of the base. I'm just going to symbolize that with a capital B again, plus 1/2 number of sides, plus what each side would measure, lowercase b, and then times this slant height. So now let's go ahead and start substituting in what we know. So area of the base, well, the base is a square, so recall area of a square is side times side, or side squared. So I'm going to substitute that with what each side measures squared. So 2.5 squared would be area of that square, plus 1/2. There are 4 sides of the square base. Each side measures 2.5. and my slant height is 5. Now we'll go ahead and kind of evaluate this formula. So 2.5 squared is 6.25. 1/2 times 4 times 2.5 times 5 is going to give me 25. So if you add those together, you get 31.25. They do want my answer rounded to the nearest tenth. So let's make sure we round that to the nearest tenth, which would be 31.3 square centimeters, because we're still looking at surface area, square centimeters. All right, let's look at another example. So let's look at what we have labeled here. So we have each side is 8. So again, this is a square pyramid. That's going to represent my lowercase b. This 6 is starting at the top and going to the middle of the pyramid. So that 6 is my actual height of my pyramid. And this 4 is just this side of this right triangle formed as a cross section of this pyramid. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to actually use this right triangle that is formed right there. I'm going to redraw it up here. This is 6 and this is 4. We're going to use that to help us find this slant height. And that slant height would serve as the hypotenuse of that right triangle. Before we do that, I do want to point out real quick, notice that this side being 4 is half of what the side of the one square would be. So that's always going to work out that way. That's going to be important for another example later on. So let's go through Pythagorean theorem quick up here to find the slant height. So you would do 6 squared plus 4 squared equals L squared 36 plus 16 equals that slant height squared. 36 and 16 adds to give me 52 equals L squared, and you take the square root. That leaves me with my slant height. Square root of 52 simplified gives me 2 square root of 13. So I'm going to leave the slant height, just like that for now. And then when we substitute in, we're going to round to the nearest tenth. So let's go ahead and substitute in. So surface area is base area plus 1/2 number of sides, each base side times slant height. So base area is going to be 8 squared plus 1/2, 4 sides still. Each side is 8, and the slant height is 2 square root of 13. Okay, so 8 squared is 64. 1/2 times 4 times 8 times 2 square root of 13, rounded to the nearest tenth, is going to be 115.4. And now we'll go ahead and add. So if you add those together, you get 179.4 square meters for this surface area. Okay, another example. So looking at this example, again, we have a square pyramid, and the only thing that they're giving me here is they're giving me the actual height of the pyramid is 10. But again, we have this right triangle cross section being formed that is a 45, 45, 90 triangle. If you recall, in a 45, 45, 90 triangle, the legs are congruent. So that tells me that if this leg is 10, this leg is also 10. And then this side of the square pyramid is going to be double that 10, as we saw in the last example. So each side of my square pyramid is going to be 20, and that is what B is going to be, 20 meters. Okay, the other thing that this 45, 45, 90 triangle is going to help me to find is the slant height. So the hypotenuse, again, is going to be representing the slant height. Again, if you recall in a 45, 45, 90 triangle, the hypotenuse is each leg 10 times the square root of 2. So that means my slant height is 10 square root of 2. Let's go ahead and start substituting into my formula. I'm just going to write it out again. Okay, substituting in. So base area will be 20 squared plus 1/2, 4 sides again. Each side is 20. And my slant height is 10 square root of 2. So 20 squared is 400, plus 1/2 times 4 times 20 times 10 square root of 2, rounded to the nearest tenth, is 565.7. If I go ahead and add that together, I get 965.7 square meters for my surface area. And one last example for surface area. So let's take a look at what we're given here. So in this picture, we are given the actual height, which is 12, starting at the top going to the middle of the pyramid. And we are given the slant height as 13. And once again, we are going to use this right triangle cross section. This time we're going to have to find the other leg of the right triangle, which I'm just going to call A. And once we find that, then we'll be able to find the base of this square pyramid. So going through Pythagorean theorem again, A squared plus 12 squared equals 13 squared. So I get A squared plus 144 equals 169. And A squared equals 25 when you subtract that, and A would be 5. So the bottom part of this right triangle in that cross section would be 5, making the whole side of this square 10 by 10. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and substitute in. So surface area is base area, 1/2 number of sides times the base times the slant height. So base area, 10 squared for that square, plus 1/2, 4 sides. Each side measures 10, and the slant height is 13. 10 squared is 100. 1/2 times 4 times 10 times 13 is 260 to give me an overall surface area of 360 square centimeters. And that is all for surface area of pyramids.